The Swedish Army is a branch of the Swedish Armed Forces in which its main responsibility is land operations. The Swedish Army is attached to the Northern European Command and SJF. History. Organization. The peacetime organization of the Swedish Army is divided into a number of regiments for the different branches. The number of active regiments has been reduced since the end of the Cold War. The regiment forms training organizations that train the various battalions of the Army and Home Guard. The Swedish Armed Forces recently underwent a transformation from conscription-based recruitment to a professional defense organization. This is part of a larger goal to abandon the mass army from the Cold War and develop an army better suited to modern maneuver warfare and at the same time retain a higher readiness. Since 2014, the Swedish Army has had around 50,000 soldiers in either full-time or part-time duty, with its mechanized infantry battalions instantly available at any time and the full force of 71 battalions ready to be deployed within 1 week. The regular army consists of 8 mechanized maneuver battalions, 19 support battalions of different kinds including artillery battalions, anti-aircraft battalions, combat engineer battalions, rangers, logistics battalions and 4 reserve heavy armored battalions and 40 territorial defense battalions. The battalion is the core unit, but all units are completely modular and can be arranged in combat teams from company to brigade level with different units depending on the task. There are a total of 6 permanent staffs under the central command capable of handling large battle groups, 4 regional staffs and 2 brigade staffs. Leadership. Until 1975, the Swedish monarch was the formal head of the army. In 1937, the staff agency chief of the army was created to lead the army in peacetime. Following a larger reorganization of the Swedish Armed Forces in 1994, CIA ceased to exist as an independent agency. Instead, the post Chief of Army Staff was created at the then newly instituted Swedish Armed Forces headquarters. In 1998, the Swedish Armed Forces was again reorganized. Most of the duties of the Chief of Army Staff were transferred to the newly instituted post of Inspector General of the Army. The post is similar to that of the Inspector General of the Swedish Navy and the Inspector General of the Swedish Air Force, later renamed to Inspector of the Army. In 2014, the Chief of Army position was reinstated. Chiefs of the Army: Per Sylvan, 1937 to 1940; Ivar Holmqvist, 1940 to 1944; Archibald Douglas, 1944 to 1948; Carl August Ahrensved, 1948 to 1957; Thord Bond, 1957 to 1963; Gert Göransson, 1963 to 1969; Carl Erik Almgren, 1969 to 1976; Nils Skold, 1976 to 1984; Erik G. Bengtsson, 1984 to 1990; Åke Sagrén, 1990 to 1994; Chiefs of Army Staff: Åke Sagrén, 1994 to 1996; Myrtle Mellin, 1996 to 1998; Inspectors General of the Army: Paul Dagerland, 1998 to 2000; Alf Sandqvist, 2000 to 2003; Inspectors of the Army: Alf Sandqvist, 2003 to 2005; Sverker Göransson, 2005 to 2007; Bernd Grundevik, 2007 to 2012; Anders Brandstrom, 2012-2013; Chiefs of Army: Anders Brandstrom, 2013 to 2016; Carl Engelbrektsson, 2016-present. Order of Battle: Infantry: 2 regiments of Infantry Life Guard stationed in Stockholm; Norrbotten Regiment stationed in Boden; Cavalry, 1 regiment and 2 battalions of cavalry, Life Regiment Hussars stationed in Karlsborg, Arménsjägarbataljon in Arvidsjaur, Life Guards stationed in Stockholm. Note that the Swedish Army's cavalry primarily trains light infantry, ranger units and military police. CBRN Defense 1 Company of chemical, biological, radiation and nuclear defense trained personnel National CBRN Defense Center Umeå, Armored Corps 3 regiments of armored, mechanized troops, Skaraborg Regiment Skovde, South Scania Regiment revving ahead, Norrbotten Regiment Boden, Artillery 1 Regiment of Artillery, Artillery Regiment Boden, Anti-Aircraft Artillery 1 Regiment of Anti-Aircraft Troops, Air Defense Regiment Halmstad, Engineers 1 Regiment of Engineering Troops, Götaland Engineer Regiment Exho, Signal Corps 1 Regiment of Signals, Command and Control Regiment Enköping, Logistic Corps 1 Regiment of Logistical Troops, Train Regiment Skovde, Rapid Reaction Force. The Swedish Army will form a rapid reaction organization in 2014 with the following units. In addition, the force will include a number of personnel from the Territorial Defense Force. Equipment: Territorial Defense Forces. The Territorial Defense Forces Home Guard consists of 40 battalions with a total of 22,000 men. Many of the soldiers have served abroad in the various missions of the regular army. Size: between the introduction of universal conscription in 1902 until the start of World War II, the army was usually maintained at a consistent strength of 100,000 men, with 2/3 of the force being conscripts for 2 years. From 1942 onwards, the Swedish government embarked upon a massive and ambitious militarization program in which conscription was strictly enforced and compulsory. Service was extended for 3 years. This, combined with propaganda about conscription being a part of social duty and defending the Swedish principle of folkhemmet, led to an army size of about 700,000 active duty soldiers in late 1945. Since the late winter of 1945, the size of the army was slowly decreased, as entire reserve battalions and brigades were gradually demobilized, and by late 1947 the size of the army was around 170,000 soldiers and was planned to stabilize at such a quantity of personnel. However, due to the rise in tensions between the East and West over the political landscape of Europe, the threat from the Soviet Union in 1949 and 1950, coinciding with the start of the Cold War, led to a return to the militaristic policy by the Swedish government. From 1950 until around 1976, the size of the army was at an average of 250,000 soldiers, with a peak of 400,000 active duty soldiers during the late 1950s and early 1960s. The mandatory period of service during this period was 22 months for non-educated conscripts and 14 months for college-educated ones, with 30 years in the reserve and 30 days of reserve service obligation per 18 months. The compulsory service period included 2 months of basic training and 3 months of advanced occupational training. The rules were badly enforced, but dodging the draft was punishable with a year of imprisonment and the refusal of state social welfare benefits. Only in 1976-77 was there a change in policy where the compulsory service period of all conscripts was reduced and equalized at 14 months. During the 1980s, the size of the army was around 180,000 soldiers and was slowly increased as time progressed until around 1988. The end of the Cold war led to a massive restructuring of the Swedish Army. Every year after 1988, the Army discharged around 40,000 conscripts and recruited only 20,000, so that by 1995 the size was down to 80,000 soldiers. Around this time the compulsory service obligation was further reduced to 10 months. Reserve service became more flexible, and changes made in enforcements of that forceful enforcement became withdrawn as policy. By 2004 the size of the Swedish Army was down to 60,000 soldiers, and in 2013, 3 years after the end of conscription, the size was at an all-time low of just 16,000 soldiers, though the Army plans to reach a level of 50,000 professional soldiers by 2020, mostly through a large media campaigns. Recruitment. For the 17th century until 2010, the Swedish Army recruitment was based upon Prussian-style conscription. All personnel were drafted as conscripts for a year of national service, after which the unit the soldier trained with was put in reserve. Upon completion of conscript service with sufficient service marks, conscripts are eligible to apply for commissioned officer training. NCO warrant officer from 2007 stay in the Army as a professional private, mainly to be employed in the Nordic Battle Group. The Army has employed soldiers for UN service on short-time contracts since the 1950s for service abroad. From July 2010, the Swedish Army is an all-professional fighting force.